So there is a change in leadership, and we talked about how the Seleucid Empire comes about, and there's Antiochus Epiphanes. He becomes a king, and he conquers all the way down into Egypt. There's just a little bit of the Ptolemaic Empire left, and he kind of unites this whole area, and he wants everyone to look alike, dress alike, speak alike, same customs. So these Jews are giving him problems. So he goes in and he says, no longer can you read the Word of God. We're going to sacrifice on the altar pigs, the sanctuary. If you circumcise your children, we're going to kill you. And you can no longer follow any dietary laws. So basically, Jerusalem becomes a desolate area. The priests are leaving. And there's one priestly family, the Maccabean family, they will become to known, who leave and go over to, okay, you have these maps. Just a bit bigger so you can kind of see. I'm sorry.
Can we get you some water?
Yeah, I had such a tickle in my throat. I'm sorry.
That thing that you ate.
Yeah. Yeah, that probably. Okay.
It's a sugar cough.
It is a sugar cough, yeah. So here in the Holy Land, okay, you have Jerusalem, Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. They flee back to their ancestral home of Modin, which is right up here. Okay, you all see that? So right up there. You will see, and because we're going to talk about it today, Idumea is the area down here. Philistines, Phoenicia is along the coast here. Samaritans will be very significant at the time of Jesus because the Samaritans are going to intermarry. And they're going to intermarry with these Persians, so they're half Jews. And they're hated by the Jews. Okay? In fact, at the time of Jesus, he's doing most of his ministry up here around the Sea of Galilee. And if you were a good Jew and you wanted to go to Jerusalem, the easiest way is to go down here. You'd never do that, though. If you were a good, law-abiding Jew, you wouldn't go through Samaria because you hated those people. You would cross over, come down, and then cross back over again. Okay? So this family leaves, and they go into Modin, and they kind of bring all the other people who want to join them. But we're seeing that a lot of the Jews are saying, let's just go along to get along. We'll do what they want, and then, we'll cross our fingers. Well, they send out a priest to Modin, along with some of the officials, the military officials, and they want Mattathias, who's the head of the family, to offer a sacrifice. He gets so angry, he kills the person. And in chapter 2, the big thing is, if you're doing a murder for a righteous reason, there's no guilt in it. Okay? So now they're going to eventually go and fight the Persians. Now, before that, the Jews, there's about a couple of thousand of them, are confronted on a Sabbath day, and by law they're not allowed to fight on the Sabbath. Right. So they're hiding in a cave, and the Persians come along, and this is not according to Maccabees, but Josephus. They pile up brush in front of the cave, and they create a fire, and the people die because of smoke inhalation, basically. It doesn't say that, but they die, okay? So the Maccabean family now is saying, listen, we aren't to attack on a Sabbath, but if they attack us, then we can fight back. So the law is great, but we're going to modify it to meet our needs. Okay? Now, at the end of chapter 2, Mattathias dies. And he has a number of sons, and that was on that chart at the beginning, okay? And he says that I want the eldest son, Jonathan,
this chart?
that chart there, Yeah, yeah. Jonathan. Okay, so Jonathan takes over as kind of the tribal leader. Okay? But Judas Mattathias, who is nicknamed Maccabee, okay, because he's the hammer, he appoints him to be the commander over the armies. Now we believe that Judas at this point is doing that already. Okay, but now it's an official thing. His father, Mattathias, has died. So Jonathan becomes the tribal leader, and Judas is the one who's going to lead the troops into battle. And that's where we get from his nickname, Maccabeus, the Maccabeans. Okay, so it's a nickname. Actually, their name is Hasmodeans. That was it's the Hasmodean dynasty. Okay, which comes down to King Herod at the time of Jesus. Okay, so this is where we pick up the story. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I did that in less than 2 minutes. Okay, are we? Any questions? Chapter 3. I don't think I put page numbers on yours, did I? I'm sorry. Just keep going until you hit page chapter 3. It's right at the top. Each chapter is its own page, so you can find it easily.
Way after that.
Okay. Then his son Judas, who was called Maccabeus, took command in his place. All his brothers and all who had joined his father helped him. They gladly fought for Israel. He extended the glory of his people. Like a giant, he put on his breastplate. He bound on his armor of war and waged battles, protecting the camp by his sword. He was like a lion in his deeds, like a lion's cub roaring for prey. He searched out and pursued those who broke the law. So who is he going after right now?
Greeks.
All the Jews who are kind of going over to the Persians, and any Persians who might be in his way. Okay? But he's waging, this is almost like a civil war at this point. If you were collaborated with the Persians, we're going to kill you. If you didn't circumcise your children, we're going to kill you. So these poor people kind of caught in the middle of these two battling armies. Okay? He burned those who troubled his people. Yeah. Lawbreakers shrank back for fear of him. Lawbreakers here means those who broke the law of God.
Okay.
Not the civil authorities. All the evildoers were confounded, and deliverance prospered by his hand. They say, we don't know how this is happening. You know? He embittered many kings, and he made Jacob glad by his deeds. Who is this Jacob? Israel. It's another word, another name for Israel. And his memory is blessed forever. You see how they're almost making him a saint?
Yeah.
He went through the cities of Judah. He went through Israel. He destroyed the ungodly out of the land. Thus he turned away wrath. He's talking about God's wrath from Israel. He was renowned to the ends of the earth. Well, what they knew is the ends of the earth, which was probably Rome.
Yeah.
Okay? He gathered in those who were perishing. Apollonius now gathered together Gentiles and a large force from Samaria to fight against Israel. So now there's a general, Apollonius, who says, we got to take care of this Judas guy. Okay? He's down here in Modin. So he comes down with his army and he pays these Samaritans, the half-Jews, to attack the Maccabeans. Okay, the family. Alright, so, want to find out what happened?
I am.
Okay, alright. and a large force to fight. Okay, when Judas learned of it, he went out to meet him, and he defeated and killed him. Okay, so Judas knows you kill the general, what happens to the troops? They scatter. So he goes right after him. You know, this guy was fearless. Many were wounded and fell, and the rest fled. Then they seized their spoils. So, okay, you got this army, okay? What spoils would they have? Weapons, yes. See, the Israelites at this point really don't have a lot of weaponry. But they're conquering their enemies and taking all their weapons, the shields, the swords, everything they can. But not only that, they would travel with food, with animals, to water. So they're seizing all of that, anything they can get their hands on. And Judas took the sword of Apollonius and used it in battle the rest of his life.
Wow.
Now, why would you do that?
To show
Yeah, bragging rights. Yeah, to show off. Yeah, what'd you say, Gary?
I said, would it have been a better sword than the one he had?
Yeah, you're probably right. It was probably the best sword in the nation. Maybe encrusted with jewels even in it, you know? But it's a status symbol, you know? I have the sword, you know? And I look at who I conquered to get that, you know? Okay.
Status symbol.
Yeah, status symbol, yes. Okay. 13. When Siron, the commander of the Syrian army. Now, Siron, he was a commander. That he's not a general. He's kind of a peon in ranking order. Okay? But this guy hears of this and he says, oh, this is a way to make a name for myself. Okay? So, heard that Judas had gathered a large company, including a body of faithful soldiers who stayed with him and went out to battle. So he has this group with him that are kind of like the elite. Well, how would we say that today? What would the Marines?
Like the Green Beret.
Like a Green Beret, you know.
Special Forces.
Special Forces, something like that. Yes.
Navy SEALs.
Yeah. Navy SEALs, something like that. That sort of concept. I will make a name for myself and win honor in the kingdom. I will make war on Judas and his companions who scorn the king's commands. Now the king's command was no circumcision, destroy all the books of the law, no reading, no worship, no dietary laws, all of those things, which was so sacred to the Jews.
What's the king now? Who was the king? Oh.
It's still,
Antiochus.
yeah.
Well, it says Syrian army here, so should we say here Seleucid army or Seleucid?
Well, it's he was. They had different areas. So he was from this area up here. Okay. So he got
the Syrian province of the Seleucid Empire. Okay.
Right. Exactly. So he got his troops together to come down here because he said we can do it. Us Syrians are better than those Jews.
Who's the king in the end, please?
Antiochus.
And
He's still the king.
The king of this whole area.
The king of the whole area.
Okay.
The king who started this, and the king, he's going to be here for quite a long time, okay? So yeah, he's still king, but as king, you don't go to battle.
No.
You send your commanders. So Antiochus sent his commander, Apollonius. Apollonius was defeated terribly. So this new guy, who is in charge of the Syrian army, says, I can do it. So he gathers his troops together to go against Judas. Okay? Okay. Once again, a strong army of godless men went up with him to help him. Now, who would these godless men be? He makes a distinction here, so we know it isn't the soldiers. No, it would be the Jews who aren't following the law. Probably, yeah, you said Samaritans. It could have been Samaritans. Yeah. Or it could have been other ones too. So we have these people in Israel who are saying, you know, we'll join up with them, the collaborators, to take vengeance on the Israelites. When he approached the ascent of Beth Horon, Judas went out to meet him with a small company. But when they saw the army coming to meet them, they say to Judas, "How can we, few as we are, fight against so great and so strong a multitude? And we are faint, for we have eaten nothing today." Judas replied, "It is easy for many to be hemmed in by a few. For in the sight of heaven," and I'm going to say this, and you're going to hear me over and over again, never says God. Just in the sight of heaven. You know? And that's one of the reasons it's part of the Apocrypha. Okay? There is no difference between saving by many or by few. Okay? So he's saying our power is going to come from above. It is not the size of the army that victory in battle depends, but strength comes from heaven. I really wish he said our strength comes from God. You know? They come against us in great insolence and lawlessness to destroy us and our wives and our children and to despoil us, to take away everything. But we fought for our lives and our laws. You see how over and over again it's the law, the law, the law. Okay? What are the two armies fighting for? Well,
Intellectual.
I guess maybe I'm not asking the right question. I see the Israelite army as fighting for their lives, their children, their country, whereas these other people coming in, they're fighting for money. Glory. Mercenaries. Yeah. Okay. And it seems like in history, okay, it's the ones who are fighting for a cause that often are successful. You know, maybe not even in the short battles, but in the long run. Okay? I think about our Revolutionary War. I mean, these people were fighting for their livelihoods, their lives, their families, their farms. The British were coming in, and many of them were, they also brought in paid mercenaries. You know, it wasn't the same. Yeah.
Yeah, verse 14 says, "I will make war on Judas and his companions who scorned the king's command."
Yeah.
Which, was that an excuse?
No.
To go in and get money? To go in and take over and get the money?
No, I think, to a certain extent it was an excuse, I guess. I think Assyrian is doing it because he wants fame and glory. And he thinks, you know, I can conquer them, then I'll be the king's friend. I'll be his trusted friend.
I'll get a promotion.
Yeah, I'll get a promotion. Yeah. But I think there's a real difference here between what they're fighting for. I think that's what Judas is saying. Judas is saying we're fighting for our very lives. And they have more to lose, and when someone has more to lose, they're going to battle harder, I think.
Sure.
You know?
So, another question. Why do you think they didn't use the word God? Were they fearful or something? Was there some kind
We do know that, like today, they will not use the proper name of God, but the scriptures still put in Yahweh, and they did not. Okay, they could have been, and I have not found anything written about this, Jim. It could have been that was part of the thinking. We don't want to misuse God's name, but when you read through the whole book of Maccabees, it's almost like the law has become bigger than God. And we're fighting for this law, and you have to follow the law. And I think that translates then down to the Pharisees at the time of Jesus. Who cares if this man is performing miracles, and he's the man of God, and we know it. He's a lawbreaker, we got to get rid of him. So the law becomes even higher than God. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And it's kind of, it's almost like a Star Wars type theory. You know, that there is power in the universe, and you just have to tap into that power of the universe. You know, that's just my opinion from reading through the book of Maccabees. But I haven't read anything scholarly on that. But I know I'm right.
I think it sounds right to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I like how you transferred it down to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
That's a perfect, beautiful transition.
Yes. Yeah.
The law.
So he's looking at this and he says, you know, we can do this. We can fight. Now, they have moved now from Modine, which is their ancestral home. Where can I?
A little higher. Right.
Why can't I find it?
Oh,
It's right above the J.
Right here.
Just west of
Right here. Right here. Modine. Okay. And now they're going to go to Beth Horon, which is up in this area here. Okay. So they kind of move north. Now, why would they do that? Well, let me show you a couple of pictures. This is Beth Horon.
Wow.
It's elevated.
I can
Yeah.
high.
Looks defensible.
It's elevated.
Yeah. And this is another picture of Beth Horon. I'm going to pass.
They can do a lot of
Yeah.
hiding.
In fact, at the time of the Maccabees, there was Beth Horon High and there was Beth Horon Low.
And they
Okay.
went high.
They went
They were
high.
high.
The high one.
So Siren and his army has to come up this hill to meet Judas and his army coming down the hill. I don't know if I shared this with you, but when we were in England and I think in Germany too, the spiral staircases
Yeah.
go. Did I share this with you before? In the castles, they go in a certain direction, and they do that on purpose because the ones who are in the castles would be the higher ones, and they would be coming down the stairs, and they want their sword hand free.
Oh, then they had to be right-handed, right?
Yeah, right here.
People are.
Yeah, most people are.
Yeah, oh, I know.
So they would have that, and they always made their staircases that way
Got it.
for defense. Okay, because you have the upper hand.
Oh.
You know that upper hand is right. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, you never attack uphill.
Right.
Wow.
And Siren is doing that here
Never
in Beth Horon.
attack uphill.
Okay? And Judas says, you know, we're few, but we're not going to get hemmed in. You know, we can hem them in, but they can't hem us in.
Right.
Okay? So they have to come up this. They know all the spots. I mean, it's their territory.
Right.
Okay. Going back to the Revolutionary War, I think one of the reasons Britain lost the Revolutionary War was that they liked to stand in a row and attack. And when our troops finally figured out that the best way to do it is hide in the trees,
Right.
and when they walk through, shoot them. You know, it was that guerrilla warfare, and that's what Judas is going to practice: is this guerrilla warfare. All right. Okay. What verse? 20. Oh, I thought I got through 30. 22. Okay. He himself will crush them before us. As for you, do not be afraid of them. When he finished speaking, he rushed suddenly against Siren and his army, and they were crushed before him. So now he's done a second great battle. They pursued them down the descent of Beth Horon to the plain. 800 of them fell, and the rest fled into the land of the Philistines. So now he's up here in Beth Horon, and they're coming down this way into the land of the Philistines, and then they're going to come down over here into Edomedia. Okay? Alright, so, down the plain. Then Judas and his brothers began to be feared, and the terror fell on the Gentiles all around them. Oh, you got a couple of battles, all of a sudden they're worried about you. His fame reached the king. What king? The king. Yeah. Antiochus, yes. Epiphanes, yeah. God himself. And they talked about the battles of Judas. When King Antiochus heard these reports, he was greatly angered. I sent my best troops. How come they can't get this Jew? Is he that good? That's not biblical. Yeah. Okay, you can just hear it, can't you? Yeah. See, I want to do a movie about this. I got all the lines. Okay. He opened his coffers and gave a year's pay to his forces and ordered them to be ready for any need. So before, when I said they were doing it for money, here we see paid in advance a year's wages.
Yeah.
That was unheard of. How did they pay the people at the time of Jesus? Oh yeah, that's
Both Roman.
yes. That would more Roman, but yeah, that's a good point though. He said salt. They often, you were worth your weight in salt, and salary comes from salt. That isn't what I was thinking though.
Okay.
I was thinking that they paid them day by day. They were day laborers.
Okay.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you got your pay.
So what happens if you got killed during the day?
Didn't get
You didn't get your pay.
No pay for you.
Payroll.
So to have that's the point, Barbara. To have a year's up front.
That's very,
That was tremendous. You know, how many volunteers do I have? Let me see your hands. Yeah, I got two. I got two fearless guys in the back. And me means we can't do anything. Okay. Then he saw that the money in the treasury was exhausted. Well, he's spending it all. And that the revenues from the country was small because of the dissension and disaster that he had caused in the land by abolishing the laws that had existed from the earliest days. Now that's a little commentary, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, the Jews are looking at this and saying, they're going bankrupt because they're trying to make us do what they want. Kind of putting it in theirs. He feared that he might not have such funds as he had before for his expenses and for the gifts that he used to give more lavishly than preceding kings. I'm running out of money. He was greatly perplexed in mind. Then he determined to go to Persia and collect the revenue from these regions and raise a large fund. So, now,
Get the taxpayers.
yes, he was going on a taxpayers, and when it says he, it doesn't necessarily mean that he did it personally. Okay? Now, so here, 2 Maccabees tells us that he did everything west of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. So where does that come into here? Okay, the Tiger and Euphrates rivers come down here into this body of water. So this is the region. So all of that is going to be taxed.
Whoa.
Okay? Is that enough?
Probably not.
If you're a king, it's never enough. Okay? So let's see what he does.
So, one question here. You
Yeah.
asked before, what do they fight for? And now he's fighting for something different, isn't he?
Well, he wants money from his constituents to battle more war.
But why? Because they're not respecting him.
Right.
So I think it's more respect this time than it is trying to get money.
Yeah.
He needs money to pay the army so he can go and win his respect back.
Right. Yes. I think you're right, Jim. I think you're right. Yeah. And also, he's really ruling by money.
He gives away gifts. And
He
things.
gives away gifts and you get loyalty from him.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. He left Lysacius, a distinguished man of royal heritage, in charge of the king's affair from the river Euphrates to the border of Egypt. So it was split up, okay? So he says, you're going to take care of all that area. I'm going to take care of all this area. I'm going to get the taxes from those people. You get the taxes from these people.
Tax collectors.
Yeah, okay. Lysacius was also to take care of his son Antiochus until he returned. Now I said before that he did not necessarily personally do this. He had people with him, but he was traveling through these areas also. And he turned over to Lysacius half of his forces and the elephants. Now Josephus says he just gave him part, not half. Okay, why elephants?
Run over and destroy.
The elephants were used for battle animals. They were war animals. They were raising elephants to go to battle.
Oh,
Like, well, in World War I we had horses.
I know.
I mean, you know, it's chariots. I mean, you know, there's always something. So these Persians learned how to control elephants and raise them and made them into tanks. Kind of, so to speak. Okay?
They're strong.
Yeah. This is going to be very bad for Judas. And gave him orders about all that he wanted done. We'll have to come back next week to find out what happened. As for the residents of Judah and Jerusalem, Lysias was to send a force against them to wipe out and destroy the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem. He was to banish the memory of them from this place. Can't you just hear the king giving those orders? You are to go in there, get rid of every one of those Jews, and I don't want to hear a thing about them again. Okay? Yeah. And you're to settle aliens in their territories. So, okay, you have these forces. We paid them a year's worth of wages. Okay? Go in there, destroy them, and let them inhabit the land. Because they're loyal to me. Alright? And distribute their land by lot. Alright. Now, the year, if you want to put it off to the side, is 165 BC. Because when they refer to the years, they're using a Hebrew calendar, so it's a little different, okay? Then the king took the remaining half of his forces and left Antioch, his capital, in the 147th year. On our calendars, 165 BC. He crossed the Euphrates River and went through the upper provinces. Lysias chose Ptolemy, son of Dormenius, and Nicor and Georgius, able men among the friends of the king. Remember, some of you weren't here, okay? When the troops come to Mattathias before he dies, when he's still living in, is it Minor? Oh, Modin. Modin. He's living in Modin. They say, if you will offer the sacrifice and get everybody in your family to offer the sacrifice to these foreign gods, you will become a friend of the king, which gives you special honor, special tribute. In fact, some of you are looking at me like we don't remember this. Let me go back. Okay, this is the way it went. There was friends, honored friends, first friends, and preferred friends.
Okay.
Classes.
Sounds like a rewards program for a credit card.
Exactly. Yeah. Preferred friends were the 3 or 4 people he had right around him. First friends were probably a dozen or 2. Honored friends were the hundreds, and he had thousands of friends out.
Bigger donors.
Yeah.
Charities.
The charities, they always lift them up, and they always have those names for them. It's the same way. Okay. So he's saying, if you do this, then you're going to get some honor in the kingdom. Yeah.
I was scratching my own.
Oh.
I had a question.
Yeah. This is like an auction. If you put your hand up. I'm sorry.
That's what I did.
Okay, I thought I saw your hand go.
Well, I moved my arm. Sorry.
And then you looked over. He was like, I don't know what. Not me. Okay.
Well done.
All right. So you be friends of the king, and sent them 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry. Now that could have been the elephants. Okay.
7,000
To go. Yeah. Remember, you got to be careful with numbers sometimes. They're symbolic, but there was a huge amount here that they were sending into Judah.
How did they feed them?
Very carefully.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Live off the land some, but.
I don't know.
Thinking of the elephants.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But he sends them into the land of Judah to destroy it, as the king had commanded. So they set out with their entire force. And when they arrived, they encamped near Emmaus in the plain. When the traders of the region heard what was said to them, they took silver and gold in immense amounts and fetters, and went to the camp to get the Israelites for slaves. So there's these caravan slave traders that kind of follow the war around, okay? And the losing army, they buy them up, okay? And then take them into some land and sell them, okay? Can you think of any time in the Old Testament that this happened before? Joseph. The traders were coming through. His brothers didn't know what to do with him. We'll sell him to the traders. Let them take him into slavery in Egypt.
Where's Emmaus? Let's see on the map.
I don't know if it's on this map.
Is that's where Jesus?
It's in the plain area up here.
That's where Jesus revealed himself to the two disciples, right?
Yes.
On the road to it.
On the road to Emmaus.
Okay.
So it's close. I want to say it's like, I think it's like in this area between Jericho and Jerusalem,
Okay.
in that area. But it would be in this plain area right here. So they're coming down pretty close.
Okay.
Okay? And again, you got to take these things with a grain of salt. I mean, there isn't roads. You notice there's not a road sign that says this way to Death Horn. There probably is in these pictures, but there wasn't at the time. I shouldn't have said that because these are modern pictures. Okay.
That's okay, we understand.
Yeah, they didn't have film in those days.
No drones.
No drones. No drones. No. What verse am I on?
42.
Okay. Now Judas and his brothers saw that misfortunes had increased and that the forces were encamped in their territory. They also learned what the king had commanded to do to the people to cause their final destruction. But they said to one another, "Let us restore the ruins of our people and fight for our people and the sanctuary and the temple." So the congregation assembled to be ready for battle and to pray and ask for mercy and compassion. Jerusalem was uninhabited like a wilderness. Not one of her children went in or out. So all of the Jews who were good Jews have now gotten out of Jerusalem. Okay? The sanctuary was trampled down and aliens held the citadel. The citadel, you had the Temple Mount, and right next to the Temple Mount was where the army had the citadel. Okay? At the time of Jesus, that citadel was controlled by the Roman soldiers. The first thing that Pontius Pilate did that got him in trouble with Rome, okay, this is when he first became governor of the area, was he wanted to honor the emperor, Augustus. So he marched into Jerusalem with his troops to go to the citadel. And they all had their shields with the emperor's image on it. And they went up to the top of the citadel and they placed these along the top of the citadel, which was higher than the sanctuary. So all of these gold images, which is against Judaism, make no graven image, was all overlooking the temple. And the Jewish people wrote a letter back to Rome, and Pontius Pilate got in trouble for that.
Wow.
So here he is, the poor guy, he's trying to honor the emperor, and he gets in trouble for it. Okay? So the reason I tell you that story is because there's a number of instances in his career that he keeps getting in trouble between the Jews and Rome. And when it comes time to crucify Jesus, what do they say to him when he doesn't want to crucify him? They say, if you don't let us crucify Jesus, you're no friend of Rome. You know what they're saying? We're writing a letter. We're posting it right now, you know. So he's stuck. He's got to let Jesus be crucified. You know, they're threatening him. Okay. How do I get off on these things? You guys just, okay.
So is the citadel outside the walls there, that higher spot?
Yeah.
Outside the walls of Jerusalem?
No, it's inside Jerusalem walls. It's inside Jerusalem.
It's higher than the temple?
It wasn't that time, yes. You got to remember, the only thing that's left of the temple now is the Wailing Wall.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no, there's a dome. Yeah, right.
No, well, yeah, no, of the
There's
original.
something there.
Yeah. There is, there's the Dome of the Rock, is it?
The gold,
Yeah, the
gold,
dome
gold,
of the rock.
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. But the only thing that's left of the original, well, there's some staircases and stuff like that. But the major thing is the Wailing Wall. And the Wailing Wall, if you ever see videos, is where you see the Jewish people go and they're saying their prayers in front of it, and it's called the Wailing, and they go, oh. And then they have little niches, and they'll put your prayer. If you want to, for a certain fee, I can get your prayers put in the Wailing Wall. Yeah, just let me know, and I'll get them.
But it's the thing to do when you're there.
And the commission is, and the commission,
Yeah,
Yeah.
only 10%.
We played games with you before, we know it ain't.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we know that you cheat.
You gotta play some boardwalk, we don't wanna play Monopoly no more.
Right, okay. But they, for a slight fee, I'm not joking about that. There is an internet site that you can go to and you pay, and they'll take your prayer and go down there and put it in the Wailing Wall.
sure.
No, seriously, email.
I mean,
Well, whether they do it or
how
not,
legal is that?
yeah, whether they do it or not, I don't know.
A lot of paper. and-
I have to share with you, I know I'm getting off the subject, but there was an hour-long program yesterday, and I've come across this before. It's a gentleman who said it's all about, we want to have Christian compassion for the Jews in Russia who are starving to death, the old Jews, okay? And I can't think of the name of the charity. But everything is about Christian compassion, helping them. He has written some horrible articles against the Christian church. But he uses it in all of his commercials. They're so sappy. And they're dying without your compassion. 95% of the people that give to this charity are Christians. And he is the third highest paid CEO of a charity in the United States. Above,
Mr. Goodwill man or
yeah.
whatever.
And yet at the same time, his charity brings in less than 10% of all other charities. So he's the highest paid, but one of the lowest charities. So the majority of the money goes to him. Okay? And I've seen commercials by him. I went and looked up things on him. And yesterday on one of the major channels, it was either 11, 12, or 13, NBC, ABC, had a whole hour-long special. Can you imagine how much he paid for that?
Oh,
You know, and it was all the same exact thing. Be careful. Be very, very careful what people tell you, because they can misuse this. And this is one that I totally believe he's being misused. And he says, we will not proclaim to our Jewish people anything about Christianity. But he uses that in every area, over and over and over again.
was that early in the morning?
No, it was in the afternoon.
I'm thinking, where was I?
Yeah.
You were doing laundry, and you came back in. I turned off the TV. I was so angry. Yeah, I was in my chair meditating.
Correct.
Meditate.
Yeah. Okay. Then they gathered together and went to Mitzvah. That's 8 miles north of Jerusalem. Okay. Now, why Mitzvah? Because Mitzvah was one of the sites of an ancient sanctuary. Before the temple in Jerusalem was built, they had a worship center in Mizpah. Okay? Because Israel, I told you, formerly had a place of prayer in Mizpah. They fasted that day, put on sackcloth, and sprinkled ashes on their heads and tore their clothes. 2 weeks ago we talked about Ash Wednesday, why we use ashes. Here it is again, the symbol of great contrition, sadness, repentance, coming back to God. And they opened the book of the law to inquire into these matters, about which the Gentiles consulted the likenesses of their gods. You see what they're saying? Those people who are against us, they go to the gods and they ask them for strength. We go to the law. Not God, the law. Okay. They also brought the vestments of the priesthood and the first fruits and the tithes. So we're in defiance of everything the king is saying. We're going to follow our religious things. And they stirred up the Nazarites who had completed their days. Now the Nazarites took a vow for a certain period of time. And these are the ones who had completed their vow. And they're saying they are the people who are extra zealous for the law. You know, they want to keep everything perfectly. And they cried aloud to heaven, not to God. What shall we do with these? What shall we take? Where shall we take them? Your sanctuary is trampled down and profaned, and your priests mourn in humiliation. Here the Gentiles are assembled against us to destroy us. You know what they plot against us. How will we be able to withstand them if you do not help us? Then they sounded the trumpets. What are the trumpets?
The chauffeur.
The shofar, the ram's horn. Have you all heard the calling of the ram's horn?
Yeah.
Okay. I played it one time for you? Okay, yeah. They're very loud. And they use them for calling to worship, but it was also a way of telling the troops what to do. They had, long blast, short blast, loud, not so loud, and they could tell the troops, go right, go left, attack down the middle with these ram's horns, okay? It was a communication device, okay? And it was portable. You know what that made it? The first cell phone. The Jewish cell phone. Some of you are laughing. I thought that was hilarious.
Is it written in the notes?
Okay.
Yeah, write it in your notes because it might be on the test. After this, Judas appointed leaders of the people in charge of thousands and hundreds and fifties and tens. Those who were building houses, or who were about to be married, or planting a vineyard, or were faint-hearted, he told to go home again, according to the law. If you don't want to be here, don't fight. We want only the best. We want people who are committed. Okay? Then the army marched out and encamped to the south of Emmaus. And Judas said, arm yourselves and be courageous. Be ready early in the morning to fight with the Gentiles who have assembled against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. It is better for us to die in battle than to see the misfortunes of our nation and of the sanctuary. But as his will in heaven may be, so shall he do. Okay, so they're kind of calling on God, but it doesn't say that. And you can see how they're always pressing. Now, why are you all closing up? I didn't say we're ready to go yet. I got a whole nother minute. I could get through chapter 4. Oh, okay.
We know better.
Yeah, you know better, don't you?
Been there.
Been there, done that, yeah. Okay. Any last minute questions? I do have 1 minute, see? I hope you're getting something from this. I mean, it's more than just a good story. We can see what, and I think there's some things that we can learn from this, I think they overdo it with the law and the zeal for the law, but they did have a zeal for God. I mean, we should have that same sort of zeal for Jesus and His Word. If we had that, sometimes we see the church growing in the areas that are most persecuted. Why? I don't know if there's anybody who's ever researched it, but I believe it's because when the church is persecuted and people come to faith, they have a real zeal and they're willing to do anything for that faith. And that propels the church forward. And I think that's what we can learn from them. Not that it's all about the law, but it's about God, Jesus. Okay? Amen.
How many laws are there? I heard like 600 and some odd.
At the time of Jesus, they were arguing over, and I always mess up the number.
It's 625? Is that right? 615?
No, it's an odd number, 636, 629. Yeah, but they had that many different laws that they were trying to follow. And they would,
How could they keep them straight?
well, that's what the scribes were for.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you couldn't keep it straight, you'd go. How many laws do we have on the books in the United States?
Yeah.
Probably millions of them. You know, how do you keep them straight? I once had a gentleman who was a hospital administrator. He was the head of the hospital. And he said to me, my job is just to figure out what law we're going to break and which one we'll have less of a fine for.
Yeah.
He said, because we have local, state, national. He said, and then you have the American Medical Association and all these other ones. And he said, that's all I do is just try to figure out, and then we choose the one that's going to do the least harm to the hospital, and that's the way we go.
Wow. That's
You know?
pretty amazing.
So that's what the scribes were doing at the time of Jesus. Okay? But they would, the problem with the
Not
law is,
practical, though.
the law motivates for a while. But then one of two things happen. You either get sick and tired of the law, and you rebel, or you find ways around the law. Okay? So there's a passage where Jesus criticizes the people because they take a vow, okay? And the law says that you are to take care of your parents in your old age.
Yeah.
Well, they take a vow that I'm going to give the money that I would have used to take care of my parents to the temple. And that vow is stronger than me taking care of my parents, so I don't take care of my parents. Okay? You can only walk so far at a time during the Sabbath. Okay? So this chair is part of my home.
That's right.
Okay? So I'm gonna walk. Okay? This is part of my home. I sat down. My home, extension of my home. Now I can walk again.
But isn't that work carrying a chair?
Yeah. Isn't it work to turn on a light bulb? So you know what Orthodox Jews do? They have timers in their house. If you go to Israel, they have Sabbath elevators. Sabbath elevators, if you get on one, stops at every floor. Because there's no work, you don't have to push the button. I mean, you know.
And that's work, pushing the button.
Pushing the button is work. Lighting a light is work. I mean, you know, do you see how you can kind of manipulate that?
Yeah.
When we lived in Bel Air, we didn't live, when I had the church in Bel Air, many of the Jewish people in our neighborhood had two kitchens.
Yeah.
They had their regular kitchen and their kosher kitchen. Because then all you did was close up the other one and use the kosher kitchen. Well, yeah. Why don't you use the kosher kitchen all the time? Well, we only use that for Passover.
It's sterilized.
Yeah, there's a lot, you have to have it. There's all sorts of rituals with
Yeah,
it.
there is.
And that's what we talked about with the Passover when we did all the festivals. So, yeah, I mean, you got to get around the law, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to figure out ways. And they're already doing that. We're already saying, well, if they attack us on the Sabbath, we can attack them.
Back.
There's gonna be a time when they're gonna say, oh no, we can attack. You know, they're gonna kind of change the law. Okay, so let's close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful word, and we ask that you help us to make it effective for our lives, that we can be better and have more zeal for your word and for living out that word in this world. Help us to be the people you want us to be. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Receive now the benediction of our Lord. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.